What do you think about all this? I'm frightened by it a little. I don't know. We always see the world from different directions, so I'm curious what you think.
Right. Well, I've not been through this before, but in years in the Navy and being all over the world and what have you, I look at this stuff and I go, it doesn't help if you get your bowels in a twist and you're worried all the time. You got to think through things and figure out, okay, am I going in the right direction or not?
Hey, everybody, Pre-Accident Podcast. Todd Conklin, your host here. How are you, my friends? So let's go ahead and dump in a couple extra little conversations because we got time. What else we got to do? We're hanging out with each other. And I connected up with an old friend of the pod. You know him and love him, Bill Rigot. Bill and I and Shane worked for years and years and years. I mean, when we were small babies for the Department of Energy running the human performance programs at our respective sites. And Bill was always interesting because we could not be more opposite from one another politically. I don't know how I don't think it's possible. But we definitely agree around things like resilience and reliability and have thought about it and have kind of grown together over years in this conversation. And so Bill checked in with me. I really am liking this checking in thing. I don't know if you've noticed it as well. I hope you are. But I'm just kind of making sure my people are all okay pretty regularly. And people are doing that to me. I'm getting calls and texts from all around the world, just checking in, just saying, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? And Bill did one of those with me, and we started talking. And I said, Bill, I'd be curious what you're thinking about this. And well, why don't we do a quick pod and just chat about it? So we set it up and did it. And that is what today will hold. I don't have any news or information or even status. I don't know what's going on. The world changes so quickly and the numbers are so dramatically high with this COVID-19 thing that I worry about things like people working in warehouses or running stores or keeping the power on or running utilities or keeping communication. All you guys that are working all the time, man, I'm thinking about you, especially you healthcare guys. Well, everybody's having to work now. I'm thinking about you a lot because it's getting freakier and freakier and freakier, and it's getting closer and closer to sort of where we all live. And you're starting to know people, and things are happening. And it's uncertainty at a level that to a great extent was somewhat unimaginable. I was looking at a risk matrix the other day, an operational risk matrix, and I noticed that the top threat, and it was a SWOT analysis, so it was a threat analysis organizationally. The top threat was pandemic. That was the biggest threat on that list. And then behind it, or below it, I guess, were all the things we're used to, operational, supply chain, fatality. I mean, there's a lot of really big ones up there. But the pandemic threat was so much higher. And I realize now that it's really a risk that's almost unimaginable until it happens, which is the phrase risk beyond safety basis. But it really makes me think that it's not the risk, it's the control. And it's not the presence of risk, it's the absence of capacity that puts us in a position where uncertainty becomes really difficult for us to manage. And that, my friends, is the world in which we're finding ourselves right now. And it's interesting, you can see where there is capacity, where organizations have the ability to flex and bend and actually adapt and change. You can really see where there's not capacity. And things like the hierarchy of controls, which we used to sort of look at as a sacred document, the last line of defense is PPE. Well, what we're learning is it's oftentimes the only line of defense. And so it is so fundamentally significant that it's not low on the hierarchy. It is pretty much the control that we count on. And when it's not there, we really see it. This podcast is not depressing or sad. And it ends with a C story because every Bill Rigo podcast has to end with a C story. But it is thoughtful, and it's a discussion really around how we think about this notion of capacity and how we think about the notion of risk and how we think of a very David Woodsian term. Thank you for being there, David Woods. You've helped me so much the last couple of weeks. This notion of graceful extensibility. And that's what Bill talks about with us. So without much further ado or fanfare, because this is kind of a bonus pod for sure, let's listen to what Bill has to say. I think you'll enjoy it immensely. This, my friends, is the great Bill Rigo, and I chatting about the world in which we live now.
And so I've never been kind of a flighty, fearful kind of guy. But I remember going through a flight deck fire on the Nimitz, one of two that I've been through, and people are yelling and screaming. I was responsible for firefighting for the ship, and I just got very quiet and calm, and I went, okay, what do I need to do next? And people saw me, and they went, what are you doing? And I said, I'm thinking. So, I kind of think that people need to step back, figure out, okay, I think people are fearful when they know something's out there, but they don't know what it is. And then they feel that they have no control over it. And so my view is to take a break, step back, figure out where am I, and then what can I do to make this better? And, so that's kind of how I take it.
So with your background, with the Nuke Navy background, how much has that prepared you for this kind of crisis?
Well, I don't know. I suppose it does. Because, I'm kind of like you. I read the news and I read the blogs and I was, I've been listening very carefully to your podcasts, your, what do you call them, your virus casts.
Oh, God. You need to get a hobby if that's what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I listened to Decker yesterday, and that was amazing. That was incredible insight. So I thought he was great.
What part of that did you like?
I just like the discussion of, Holnagel and, and others that he cited where, there's pretty deep academic thinkers that have thought about this and how you respond to it and how you build resilience and capacity in your systems to deal with this. And so, Decker's always fun to listen to. He's still very much the academic, but, I liked his story about, walking on campus and there's no students. And this is certainly going to change the way that we approach academics. We started looking at distance learning and we did some tests. We found that people who took tests through distance learning as opposed to instructor-led courses scored the same on the tests. And so when we looked at it further, we found that it wasn't really the same. So we found that people who did distance learning got different questions wrong in instructor-led material, but the outcome was the same. They were qualified. So I think, I think one of the good things that's going to come out of this is, how do you do distance learning better? How do you leverage these professors to be able to touch more students in a better way? And maybe we'll bring the cost of education down. I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, I think potentially So I would say, Bill, that the world we re-enter when this all settles down is going to be different than the world we left. And so we're going to have lots of change. And I think
Clearly.
one of the things is I think there's going to be some hard questions asked, like if the whole admin staff is working from home and we're still getting work done, how much do we need the whole admin staff? I mean, that's a dangerous question, but I think it's a reasonable question to ask.
Right. And I went through this. Well, shoot, I was the XO at the nuclear prototype up in New York, working for Naval Reactors, and one of our reactors went down, and it had a leak, and it was going to take months to fix. And we put a whole graduating class of students in jeopardy. And we had a couple of thousand students on site at the time. And so Admiral McKee, who'd taken over from Admiral Rickover, said, "How come one little glitch can throw you in this much of a problem where you're not graduating classes and sending these nukes out to the fleet?" And we looked at it and we saw that over the years, as bad things happened in the nuclear Navy, that we would add stuff to the curriculum that we're teaching to the point that the people who were going to qualify and then graduate were qualifying later and later and later. And so we had no capacity left if there was a glitch. And every class, we were coming closer and closer to graduating them because they weren't done. So McKee said, "Okay, stop. You've got some time now while the reactor's down. Go ahead and look at your curriculum and see what's in there that you really don't need to teach anymore." And we looked at it, and we were able to cut out, a good, 30 or 40% of it. So, I think the lesson is over time, the stuff increases, these requirements increase to fill the available time until you've got no more capacity left to be resilient. And I really think that we're going to come to, that people are going to go, why are we doing this? And so it especially comes true with regulations. So you look at, they've released companies from all these FDA regulations and what have you, and they're coming up with some things that appear to be working, but the only way they could do it was to basically get relief from the FDA against liability once they were figuring this stuff out. So I think, that's going to be a lesson to be learned. I think you're right. I think we're going to come out of this different. I think people are going to start rethinking, why do we lay these burdens on ourselves, and how do we get going from here?
It's a really good comment, because those rules are the first to go in crisis, and you're really watching it happen. It's kind of remarkable. So then you ask this question, well, how valuable are the rules anyway?
Right. And you and I have been talking about this for years. They're used to punish people in hindsight, retrospectively.
I guess that's value. What do you think about all the capacity question in healthcare? Because I'm always interested in what you think about healthcare.
So my baby brother, is an ER doc in Southern Michigan. And I spent an hour on the phone with him this morning just to kind of see what's going on. And I mean, he's living the dream. Okay, not. But he's, so there's some good things and bad things coming out of this. The bad thing is he's running out of PPE. So they ran out of gowns this week. He's going around with one mask that he wears all day, and he doesn't change it between patients. But if you wore it, and he can't wear it 100% of the time, because if he did, he couldn't reuse it. So, but they've got ventilators, they've got, so they've got an adequate supply at this point. But they haven't seen the market increase in cases like Detroit has. So Detroit's hospitals are slammed right now. They're at capacity. But one of the good things that's happening right now is people aren't showing up to the ER because they figured out, because the they're hearing all this stuff coming out over the news that, that's where people go to die. So these people that are using the ER as their doctor when they've got a cold or, what have you, they're not coming. So the patient load at his ERs is 25% to 50% of what it was before the COVID thing. But he had some really interesting things to say. Like the EMS is triaging in the field. So they'll get a call from, for an ambulance, and they'll show up and they'll look at this person and they'll go, no, you're not going to the ER. You're not getting a free ride. You're not getting free drugs, because there have been lots of people that, believe it or not, are abusing the ER, which is what infuriates, one of the things that infuriates my brother. But the other thing that's going on is hospital administrators have pushed efficiency to the point that, when this thing hit, they didn't have any backup. And when their supply chains failed, they couldn't stock their storerooms. And so, we've talked about Nassim Taleb and the black swan, and his view is that the enemy of resilience is efficiency. So in this case, hospital administrators are eating into their margin to become more efficient. And as my brother says, I can't be more efficient than I am right now. Yeah, and they're pushing me for more. And so that ate into their capacity. And so ER docs on the front line of this coronavirus thing are really having to adapt on a daily basis just to keep from killing people. So, and, like one of the things he's doing is he stopped placating his patients. So he'd run tests or administer meds, because it, the patient, it'll make the patient feel better. But now he doesn't have the capacity to do that. So he's saying, screw you. You're getting this. You don't need that. This is how we're doing it. And one of the drivers for that behavior is the system where they don't get paid unless they get so many upticks from patients in their surveys. So, as if you reward something, you're going to get more of it. And if you punish it, you're going to get less of it. So they were rewarded to give a lot of CYA testing just to get better scores out of their patients. So now they can't do it, so they're not. It's I think it's interesting, and I've been, one of the things that I'm seeing in all this, I keep going back to Taleb and the Black Swan. Those events, as are, what does he say? They're rare, they're unpredictable, and they're extremely consequential. And the only thing that you can defend it with is resilience. And I didn't realize it, but he's written another book called Skin in the Game, which I think he wrote a couple of years ago. So I've got to go get that and read it. But I keep going. One of the things, the other authors I go back and look at is this guy by the name of Conklin.
I don't know him.
Yeah, who is that guy? But he talks about resilience, from Taleb's perspective, but in terms of how you prepare, being resilient in preparation, how you be resilient while you're doing work, and how you build resilience and capacity in terms of recovery. And so, in terms of preparation for this event, well, that moment is over. So you got to live with whatever preparations you made before this. But what I'm seeing today is medical teams, having talked to my brother, is they're really adapting in ways that assure patient safety while also ensuring their own safety. So it's PPE, pre-job briefs, all those things, and then looking at how do you not get hurt, and then in terms of recovery, we're seeing that right now, and so who's the guy that talks about recovery as the ability to fail gracefully?
David Woods.
David Woods. That's right. So we're seeing that already with manufacturers coming up with, they're manufacturing ventilators from GE plants and Ford plants and Tesla and all these people, and then people figuring out micro experimenting with treatments, which I think is cool. And then they come up with quicker tests and get more of them out to people. So I think that's going on. And in terms of and for people like us, what are we doing to work safely? And we're obviously practicing social distancing. We're washing our hands way more than we used to. We're doing distance learning and virtual meetings and all that sort of thing. And I think it's we're not shaking hands anymore. We're doing church online, and just like the medical teams in talking to my brother are figuring out, okay, what are better ways to treat patients. So I think that those are all things that we're doing, and it will be interesting to see how quickly we come out of it, what we do at the end of it, and what we do differently, because there's a fair number of lessons to be learned from this.
Well, so let me pull the string on that. What should we be learning? What are you interested in? What's the Rigotian sense of reality? That's what I call your brain, Bill. What are you thinking about? What should we be learning out of this?
So I think, number one, offshoring your manufacturing and pharmaceutical industry to countries that are have antithetical values to American values probably ought to be rethought. And I as you know, I'm not into blaming people because I find that kind of pointless. But as we go forward, when we get China has told us, well, we really think that you guys started it, and we really think that when we get done with our crisis, maybe we'll give you some more medicine. I think that's just something that we need to rethink.
Let me pull the string on that a minute, because I would be sad if I didn't. That's the tension between economics and capacity, right? I mean, because it's just a lot cheaper to offshore all that stuff. And
absolutely,
and the value to the shareholder, a word they use a lot in the business, is higher. So now you've got that pull between capacity and economics, which is it's super expensive to have capacity until you don't have capacity, and then if you don't have capacity, it's super expensive.
Yeah, that's right. So I think there's some. We've got to strike some balance between strategic necessity and economics. And so, I think that's important. And you've got to recognize, things will be more expensive. But I think the American people are more willing to accept that today. I mean, they've been told that for years and years, but haven't really believed it until now. Now that they can't get masks and they can't get hand sanitizer and they can't, I don't know why they can't get toilet paper.
Yeah, so toilet paper's got a pretty big domestic supply, but we're wiped out, and I use the word wiped out on purpose.
Oh. So, but I also think that we need to reevaluate our regulatory posture. I don't think you can regulate harm away. I don't think you can regulate risk away. I think you've got to strike some balance between, harm and common sense. Um, so I think I think we're going to have a lot of success that out of this that we hadn't really thought about, and regulators, hate this. But I think we're going to need to look at how we're regulating what we're doing. And then I think I think it's exciting to be not only taking a look at distance learning, but actually having to do it. And in some cases, do it without a whole lot of pre-planning. People are just doing it because they have to. So I've got a daughter-in-law who is a teacher down in the Greenville school system, and she's on the administrative tab, or the administrative side now, working on pedagogy. And so it'll be interesting to see how her job changes in terms of distance learning. But I really think that we're going to learn a lot about distance learning that we wouldn't have had we not had this. And then, and in talking to my brother about learning, he says, that these administrators really need to listen to the ER docs a little bit more. and so I talked to him about, learning teams, and, the object of learning team is when management is, confused about how to go forward with a problem, even though they really think they know what they need to do. You form a learning team and you let the people who do the work figure out what they need to do. And my brother said, yeah, kind of like that. But,
so what advice would you give the world?
You need to spend some time thinking about this, not about how you got here, because that's important. But I think what you're going to do differently tomorrow and how you're going to learn from this. I would also encourage people to be nicer. I'm really seeing some tense people out there who could be a little bit more cordial to others.
Yes.
So, and wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
That's kind of what I think. And I guess to leave your podcasters with something else to think about. When I was in the Navy, I'm a brand new EOW, engineering officer of the watch on the USS Nimitz. I just qualified. I'm down there watching flight operations, and the Nimitz was off the coast of Iran with a hostage rescue at the time, and we're operating in blue water ops, which meant that when you launch planes, they had to come back to your ship because there was no other landing fields within 1,000 miles that they could land. So I watched this sortie of 17 aircraft get catapulted off the deck. And just after that, the forward reactor scrammed. And we were in a bastardized electric plant lined up because we had a casualty in one of the generators. And shortly after that, the after reactor shut down. And so ship coasted to a stop. All the diesels came up. The lights came back on. And we're going, oh, what the hell just happened? And so we had a double reactor shutdown, which is not analyzed by naval reactors. And so at the time, the procedure to start up the reactors took several hours. And we had about an hour to go before planes started falling out of the sky with lack of fuel. And so the chief engineer came down to main control to help me. And the reactor officer went down to the forward plant because he figured he could get that started up the quickest. And within about 30 minutes, they got the reactor started up again, and we were bringing steam back in the engine room. And a few minutes after that, we got the ship going again and started recovering aircraft. Well, the point is, that was kind of a black swan event. It had never been thought out before. It had never happened before, and we weren't trained on any of it. But our training in nuclear power was so thorough that we knew we could figure it out, and we did. And so we had the intellectual capacity, and we had the good engineering systems to back it up to be able to recover from that casualty that could have resulted in the loss of 17 aircraft and their crews. And so you can't plan for things like that, but in nuclear power, we knew we had the capacity in spades to be able to deal with pretty much anything that affected the engineering plant. And I'm not sure the country, in terms of this response to the coronavirus or any other major, pandemic, really has either the intellectual capacity or the systems in place to be able to defend it effectively. Which is why we're having so many deaths right now, and the exponential rise in the coronavirus itself. So, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think there's more that we can be doing and learning.
Thank you, Mr. Rigo. I don't know if that was depressing or encouraging, but I don't know anything anymore. I don't know what is depressing and encouraging. I know this. Diet yourself on the news. Take time to take care of yourself and know that we're all in this together. Learn something new every single day. Have as much fun as you possibly can. Be kind to each other. You heard Bill say it. And for goodness sakes, you guys, be safe.